So what, you're there in this room watching this on the screen as this happens. What's going through your mind?
What the hell is this?
Over the last 2 years, the US government and military have suddenly been open and honest about one major bombshell. UFOs are real. What was once thought to be a fringe conspiracy theory is now being legitimized and confirmed by authorities as true.
3 more U.S. senators received a classified briefing about UFOs.
We have had people saying that they've seen things.
The Navy has admitted that its pilots encounter unidentified aircraft so often that they've had to draft new reporting guidelines
on how to report sightings of UFOs.
Seemingly every week, a new piece of information regarding the UFO phenomenon makes headlines worldwide.
UFOs, UFO,
UFOs,
UFOs,
UFO,
UFOs, UFO.
In this episode, we are bringing you the latest facts and revelations that something incredible just might be happening. What do you think it was?
I want to believe that it was extraterrestrial, but at the same time, I'm very skeptical.
Something that's not of this world or not of this dimension.
Something new, something big, something that could change the course of human existence. Welcome to the Basement Office. Welcome to Season 2 of the Basement Office. We are so excited to be back. I'm here with Nick Pope again, who ran the UFO office in the Ministry of Defense in the UK. Welcome back.
It's great to be back. A lot's happened.
A lot has happened. Where we left off in the end of Season 1 was the mystery behind these 3 Navy videos taken by Navy fighter pilots, and ever since then, more and more details have come out.
Sure, it's like every week there's a new development here. We've had, since we last spoke about this, for example, classified briefings in Congress about this, various senators going on the record to say that they've received these briefings, others saying we want them.
Apparently, some United States senators have received an actual briefing on this UFO phenomenon.
3 more U.S. senators received a classified briefing about UFOs.
The key takeaways I have is that the military and others are taking this issue seriously, which I think in previous generations may not have been the case.
Good morning, sir. We've had the president go on the record and respond to questions about this.
You gave an interview the other day in which you said you've been briefed on unidentified flying objects. Are they real?
We have had people saying that they've seen things. I'm not a believer, but I have an open mind, Tucker.
UFO, UFOs,
UFOs.
It seems like every week something is happening, and I'd like to go through some of these very specific revelations as of late. In response to John Greenwald at the Black Vault, a site dedicated to unearthing government secrets by using the Freedom of Information Act, the Navy released the specific dates of these videos. The specific time and location was not known before, and we now know that the famous Nimitz Tic Tac video, the Navy said that was November 14th, 2004. And the other 2 videos, the Go Fast and the Gimbal videos, were taken off the East Coast, specifically on the 21st of January 2015. 100 miles east, equidistant between Jacksonville and Savannah. So if you look at the map, pinpointed, that's where this stuff happened. They also, Navy pilots reported seeing strange lights almost daily there off the East Coast, 2014 to 2015. So what you're seeing in that video is just the tip of the iceberg, because it's been revealed this was going on almost every day.
Absolutely, the tip of the iceberg, or a tip of the iceberg, if you'll excuse the pun. But absolutely, and one of the other recent revelations that caught my eye is the fact that the US Navy has issued guidance to pilots and radar operators saying what to do if they encounter these UAP.
The Navy has admitted that its pilots encounter unidentified aircraft so often that they've had to draft new reporting guidelines to allow pilots to come forward.
Now, they confirmed that they had issued this guidance but they refused to reveal what the guidance said. They said that's classified.
Right, because I feel like a lot of pilots had no idea what to do. There was no protocol before. If you see a UFO, here's what you do. It didn't seem to exist, and so the Navy has said at least that they're going to do that. Another thing is the Navy has been pressed and pushed about what we're seeing in these videos, because it could be quite a few things. And I want to read these specific statements from the official Navy spokesman because they're jaw-dropping. Navy spokesman Joe Gradisher said, "The Navy considers the phenomena depicted in the 3 videos as unidentified. This is all about frequent incursions into our training ranges by UAPs. Those incursions present a safety hazard to the safe flight of our aviators and the security of our operations." So the Navy officially says this is unknown, unidentified aerial phenomenon. These things are breaking through flight zones of our pilots and are, quote, creating a safety hazard for military pilots.
Now, the Navy say, we don't know. But I know, you know, the President has now been briefed on this. He said so. When you brief the President on anything, you don't go in and say, "Sir, I don't know."
I don't know.
No,
Okay,
I don't know.
see ya.
Because the
Yeah.
President's next question is, okay, I get that you don't know, but what is your best current assessment? When people are saying, what is this? And the Navy say, we don't know. That's not the right question. The right question is, what is the best current assessment that you must have briefed to the President?
Right.
I mean, here, around, for example, the Nimitz task group, this is some of the most heavily monitored and defended airspace anywhere on this planet. The idea that something slips through that air defense net with impunity, flies around, runs rings around these pilots, and then zips out again. I mean, the implications are profound.
Also, in response to a Freedom of Information Act request, the Navy has confirmed that they possess several top secret documents and at least one classified video regarding the Nimitz Incident. The length of the video is unknown, and they would not disclose that. The version that was leaked online is around 1 minute. But several naval officers from the Nimitz encounter say that a much longer video of the encounter, between 8 to 10 minutes long, exists. And I spoke to Ryan Weigelt and Jason Turner, who were stationed on the USS Princeton during the nearby Nimitz encounter. They say they saw the full video, live, as it happened. You've seen the clip that is now public?
Yes, I have.
That video is 1 minute long. Are you of the opinion that there is much more video?
Yes, I am. I was in charge of H-60 detachments on small U.S. Navy ships. I did a lot of workups during this time frame with a lot of different ships, but in November I was on the Princeton.
At the time, I was a petty officer 3rd class on the USS Princeton.
What was the Princeton?
A guided missile cruiser. They were the air controllers for the Nimitz, so we were pretty much their air defense.
The Nimitz was in essence a runway. The Princeton was the air control tower?
Correct.
So November 14th, 2004, when did you first notice something odd was happening?
It was like people were talking on the ship like something was happening. We didn't know what.
I noticed that the ship they were in a higher tempo. Something was going on. I know I was hearing real world situation a lot around the ship.
So when I asked him if this was real world, his reply was, it's real world.
What does that mean, real world situation?
When we're going through training, there was exercises that were happening. So either it's real world or it's the exercise. So when I asked if it was real world, he said, yeah, no, this is real world.
Yeah, it's not a drill.
Did you see any live video coming back from what they were witnessing?
I did see video, yes. I saw it in the Combat Information Center.
The one computer that I saw, it was directly to my left. that the video was playing on.
I was in combat information for a good 10 minutes, and this whole time it was playing out in front of us.
So for 10 minutes, that video was going.
Yes, it was.
I was in there about 10 to 12 minutes, and for most of that time, this thing was playing.
So what, you're there in this room watching this on the screen as this happens. What's going
Right.
through your mind?
What the hell is this?
What was on the video?
It was a multitude of things. You know, the one that everybody sees, the minute and a half of the tic tac. You do see that, but there's a lot of in and out, like where the thing just disappears off the screen. It's hard to tell like exactly what this thing was doing.
How did you observe this thing was moving?
It was erratic. It would go from point A to point B at one speed from start to finish, and then it would stop, and that's where it would be. So it wasn't like there was no buildup or propulsion.
What do you think it was?
I want to believe that it was extraterrestrial, but at the same time, I'm very skeptical.
Something that's not of this world or not of this dimension. I don't think it's any secret government technology, although it wouldn't surprise me if it was.
I hope it's ours. And the reason I hope it's ours is because if we've got that kind of technology, stand by.
And some of these Navy witnesses, and this made headlines, said unknown individuals, that's a direct quote, unknown individuals came aboard a Navy ship and said, give us the tapes.
In 2004, I was a second-class petty officer, an aviation electronics technician in the Navy.
On November 14th, 2004, where were you?
I was on board the USS Nimitz. During the day, we launch the aircraft. That's one of my jobs. We have to power it up, run all the systems, send it off the pointy end of the ship, and wait for it to come back. So I actually know for a fact that plane was recording because I'm the one who turned it on before it ever left the deck. When those hard drives come back, we take them out because they're classified hard drives, so we store them in our safe.
The E-2 Hawkeye comes back and lands. You go out and take the data tapes?
But yes, what would be the equivalent of the data tapes on the F-18s were our hard drives, and I pulled them out of the airplane.
And then what happens?
I want to say about 15, 20 minutes to a half hour after those came back, my commanding officer shows up at our door, but with them were two guys in Air Force uniforms, which we hadn't recognized. He asked for the hard drives that were off that flight, and it's 6 total bricks that he wanted. Normal procedure is for us to sign them out to wherever the plane they're going to or to whoever's taking them. No sooner than I started writing, my commanding officer said, don't worry about it, just give them to me. He took them, he took the 2 officers that were with him, and they left, and I did not see them again.
All I remember is helicopter coming in and 2 guys from the Air Force walking into the hangar bay. They were in regular flight suits, but you could tell that they were Air Force. They had some bags with them, and they walked right out.
Well, the story we've just heard from those Navy witnesses mirrors the urban legend of the so-called Men in Black, like the movie with Will Smith.
Right.
But for real, these dark-suited individuals who, after UFO sightings, confiscate any evidence they might have.
I knew it. This is an alien, and you guys are from some government agency trying to keep it under wraps.
No.
It's part of the phenomenon, and always has been. And now we're hearing it from these military witnesses.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you will, look right here.
When we look at those 3 videos, and when we look at the wider phenomenon that the US Navy has admitted they are interacting with, there are basically 4 options. Number 1, it is some bizarre combination of pilot error and radar glitch.
Dust on the camera.
Bugs.
Malfunctioning camera.
All that.
Glare, yeah.
It's just misidentification. Option number 2 is that it's our own tech. Some other part of the US government has developed something. Drone swarms, for example, we hear a lot about these days. Blind testing it against the fleet to see how quickly is it detected on radar. How quickly do you get the aircraft up?
Using our own military, unbeknownst to them, to test something new and see how they react to it, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Option 3 is that it's another country, and realistically, I think only Russia or China, and maybe the UK, could develop something like that. And option 4, something else.
Right. And when it comes to that something else, we know that Project Blue Book, for example, investigated that something else. UFOs, whatever you want to call them. And more recently, the Pentagon's ATIP program investigated that something else.
I think there's something really important here that I want to stress. ATIP was fundamentally different to Blue Book in a very important way. When Project Blue Book, back in the 50s and the 60s, looked at the UFO phenomenon, they were very much an investigation program. You know, Mr. or Mrs. Smith would see something in the sky, they would report it to the Air Force would send out people, investigate, check the radar tapes. ATIP seems to be fundamentally new and different. What ATIP did was say, look, I'm not particularly interested in Mr. or Mrs. Smith. I want to figure out the technology behind the phenomenon. And when you look, for example, at the letter that the Defense Intelligence Agency sent to Congress about ATIP, a list of 38 programs that they sent, it's all about invisibility, anti-gravity, wormholes, warp drive, stargates. It's all about trying to figure out the tech.
Right. And I spoke with Eric Davis, who is actually the author of one of the ATIP documents you just brought up. Who was contracted, he was an ATIP employee and wrote one of the research studies of ATIP. Let's take a listen to what he has to say about the science behind what we're looking at.
Well, I'm Eric Davis. I'm an astrophysicist, and up until this week, I was the Chief Science Officer at Earth Tech International Incorporated and the Institute for Advanced Studies at Austin. I worked for a period of time as an outside independent contractor to the Air Force Research Laboratory at Edwards Air Force Base. I'm moving on to a new job with the Aerospace Corporation in Huntsville, Alabama. I'll be working on the nuclear thermal propulsion program for the manned lunar and manned Mars missions.
You ultimately were part of the Pentagon's UFO program.
Yes, I was.
In what respect were you involved with ATIP?
As a consultant.
With the Nimitz Tic Tac, in your opinion, what are we looking at?
In my opinion, it's not of human origin, not of human construct. It's absolutely impossible compared to modern American and foreign technologies and aviation, aerospace, science, and engineering. Way beyond that. We investigated all that. We advised the ATIP program director on the encounter data, the witness reports, and so forth and so on. The Tic Tac exceeded the performance of anything we can produce. They are not any kind of an advanced UAV that the Chinese or the Russians or the Iranians or North Korea produce. They're light years ahead of anything that we have. They have no physical, external, visible aeronautical control systems or aerodynamic control systems. They have no external engine pylons in nacelles, no internal engine pylons in nacelles, no infrared heat signature from an exhaust nozzle or exhaust plume. The fact that they're shaped like a Tic Tac instead of an aircraft that would need to move through a gaseous atmosphere to produce lift to keep it afloat in the air. They can hover. They can move at estimated speeds were well above Mach 8, Mach 26. That's impossible. The accelerations that these things underwent would kill humans. And we don't even have a robotics technology today or a computer technology that operates on autonomous artificial intelligence control that can withstand accelerations like that yet. That kind of technology we have is too fragile for accelerations like that.
People will say that the Tic Tacs, the spheres, whatever, are nothing but human-made, top-secret black projects that it's being held, withheld from the public. You don't think that's possible?
We've already checked into that. There is no such thing. They don't exist because there is no requirements for that type of technology. First of all, we don't have that technology right now. They can't be human-made.
An astrophysicist employed contracted out by the Pentagon's UFO program says what you're seeing in these videos can't be human-made. And the technology that this astrophysicist observed and studied is beyond all human comprehension, all human capabilities, all human possibilities.
If there's one single thing that explains government secrecy on UFOs, it's the race to be the first nation to understand that tech and to incorporate it into your own system. It's a little bit of a cliche of mine, but the nation on Earth that first manages that, if this is what we're dealing with, is going to be the preeminent nation on this planet for the foreseeable future, politically, militarily, economically.
Right. And in pursuit of that new technology, that cutting-edge technology, that some would say otherworldly technology, we have this. The U.S. Navy, the Department of the Navy, patented a wild, crazy, electromagnetic plasma aircraft. I was like, what the heck? Electromagnetic plasma machine? And you'll see, I mean, this looks like a Tic Tac, does it not?
Absolutely.
There are no wings, really. There are no jets. There are no traditional aerodynamic, physical things that you would see on an aircraft. The description is one of electromagnetism and plasma manipulation and distorting the air and almost, I guess, space-time around the craft itself. One particular team of journalists at The Drive, they're called the War Zone, they have spent the last year digging into these patents and have discovered some pretty fascinating things. I actually spoke with them. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Brett Tingley. I'm a freelance writer and journalist. I'm currently a contributor for the War Zone, and it's an aviation and aerospace and defense news and analysis site.
Before I dive into the patents themselves, so this is Dr. Salvatore Paiace. He's the guy behind these patents, correct?
Correct. He's currently employed by Naval Strategic Systems Program, but prior to that, he was employed by the Naval Air Warfare Center as an aerospace engineer. And he conducted a research project funded by the Navy into high-energy electromagnetic fields. And apparently, as a result of that research project, he was able to get these 5 patents approved.
Tell me, how did you get a hold of him? And once you did, how did that go?
I've been emailing Dr. Paiace since June, and I never heard back from him. A few months ago, lo and behold, he emailed me back. And as far as I know, I'm the only journalist he has responded to. It took me this whole time to get the Pentagon to allow me to publish what they allowed me to publish. He said a little more to me that they told me I couldn't say.
So you had to clear with the Pentagon?
Yeah. He apparently is hidden behind all kinds of non-disclosure agreements, gag orders. He's not really allowed to talk to the press. But I told him who I was and why I was writing him. It was on the record. He knew it was on the record.
What were the most important things you learned in your conversation with Dr. Paiace?
I think the most important thing is that he is a believer and an advocate of his own research. In our correspondence, he went so far as to call it the Paiace Effect, which he describes as the controlled motion of electrified matter subjected to acceleration, deceleration, accelerated transients in a highly vibrated mode.
What the hell does that mean?
Paiace claims that this can lead to the enablement of macroscopic quantum coherence. In other words, you can kind of engineer the quantum state at a macroscopic level.
And that results in what?
Being able to, as he puts it, engineer the fabric of space-time, engineer the fabric of our reality at a fundamental level. It also, he claims, it can create these incredible electromagnetic fields, which essentially are a force field. They can deflect missiles, they can deflect asteroids, and it can also lead to the enablement of high temperature or room temperature superconductors, which have been like the holy grail of physics for decades.
couple things that are factual about this patent that I need to bring up, though. When this patent was first submitted by the Department of the Navy, the U.S. Patent Office denied it.
They rejected the hybrid aerospace craft, and they rejected the room temperature superconductor.
Why?
The examiner felt that there were enablement issues in both. In other words, that they were not possible based on the descriptions given, based on the science provided.
But James Sheehy wrote a letter saying these things are operable?
Yes. Dr. James Sheehy is the Chief Technical Officer for the Naval Aviation Enterprise. So he's one of the lead scientists behind the Navy's aviation and aerospace research endeavors. He wrote a letter in the case of both of those rejections to the U.S. Patent Office, assuring them that these patents are enabled, and in the case of the room temperature superconductor, operable. Enabled, or enablement, according to the U.S. Patent Office, means it can be built. It's possible based on the description in the patent. Operable, on the other hand, has a very different meaning, which means there is one working. There is one in operation, at least one.
When you look at these patents, when you listen to some of the people who have been involved in these programs, it's almost as if you're dealing with a new physics here. Some people believe this is an attempt by the government, the Navy, to say, okay, there is a technology behind these UAP sightings. We want to replicate that technology. I mean, replicating the technology, I think we would agree, is almost the holy grail of this.
What's striking to me is not only the way you describe it, these craft, but the way the patent itself describes at least the potential of these craft mimics the description of unidentified flying objects, not only seen specifically in 2004 by the USS Nimitz crew, but other UFO sightings across the world. Could this patent be a version of what people are seeing?
Some of the patents, even the drawings of these patents, seem to resemble many of the objects or craft seen for decades.
This is a Tic Tac.
I know, and that's, as soon as I saw that drawing in the Paiace patent, I was like, are they trolling us? Right? I mean, how can that not be described as anything other than a Tic Tac shape? And that's the patent for the gravitational wave generator.
Are you familiar with the Belgian sighting, the Belgian wave?
Yes, absolutely.
In the famous photo?
Again, the similarities between that craft, the patent, and black triangles out of Belgium, it seems like there's a connection there. But if you really read into what Paiace is describing in these patents, it seems to match up exactly with both the Navy sightings and so many other sightings around the world, as you mentioned.
Could this be ultimately what the folks in the Nimitz were seeing?
Absolutely. The only question, I guess, is whether the folks on the Nimitz saw one of our versions trying to replicate, or whether they saw the original.
What's the chicken and what's the egg? What's the Tic Tac and what's the patent?
So, chicken, egg, did they witness something not human and then try to replicate what they observed, right, and that's what the patents are? Or was what they saw way back in 2004 what, they've always, something the Navy, the military's always had, and is just now being public about it?
Yes.
I think the former is way more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Within this patent, Nick, is a description of these objects' capability to move at fast speeds both in the air and under the water.
This Paiace effect can create an aircraft which can fly through air, space, or water equally well, completely ignoring all hydrodynamic and aerodynamic forces.
That paragraph really stuck out to me because in season 1, you revealed something to me that blew my mind. Let's cut to that clip.
There have been a number of reports of UFOs emerging from and flying back into the ocean. Some of these things, I've heard them called USOs, unidentified submerged object. Just as you think you're beginning to get a handle on this phenomenon, there's a new aspect to it.
They could be coming from the ocean?
Put it this way,
if UFOs are extraterrestrial visitors, any civilization that has mastered the secrets of interstellar travel probably isn't going to be worried by flying into and out of the water.
So when you take this patent that describes a craft that can fly equally in the air and in the water, and you combine that with the Nimitz sighting in 2004, where Navy pilots saw a UFO just under the water, and then you look at hundreds and hundreds of cases around the world of UFOs under or above or near bodies of water,
a bigger mystery begins to emerge.
And on the next episode, we will be diving deep into USOs, unidentified submerged objects.